Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda, and please welcome to our Operation Freedom platform, WeThePeopleProcessing.com. You know, are you tired of being threatened to be canceled just because you have a company focused on liberty and freedom? Well, worry no more, folks. WeThePeopleProcessing.com is your go-to merchant services, freedom-based company to provide business service payment solutions. We the People Processing provides their clients a cancel culture-free platform which is domestically based. They provide competitive rates, no contracts with next-day funding, a fully vetted and like-minded financial infrastructure, and full support for integrations, implementation, and e-commerce efforts. Bottom line, WeThePeopleProcessing.com focuses on defending your company's free market growth, values, and future. Check them out at www.WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Once you're on the site, enter in password Operation Freedom or call 855-499-2024. That's WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Then, when on the website, enter Operation Freedom as your password or call 855-499-2024.
Mr. President-elect,
go ahead.
Can you state
She's
categorically?
asking a question.
Mr. President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You are
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a
question.
question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir.
I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to Dave versus the MSM. I'd like to thank you for joining me today and thank you for networking this information to those you know and love. The more people that are educated with what's really going on, the more people that become empowered. And the more people become empowered, the sooner we end this reign of terror by the deep state, the New World Order crowd, the globalist syndicate, or what I call the globalist cult. And they are a cult. They're a cult that feeds off of war and death and conflict. See, that's one of the main differences between the freedom movement and the globalist cult. The freedom movement focuses on peace and prosperity and individual rights, while the globalist cult feeds off of conflict and war and death and destruction. If you look at the track record of the globalist cult over the last hundreds of years, and they've been around hundreds of years, their playbook centers around dividing and conquering and using conflict and war to gain more power and control and wealth. And frankly, that playbook has worked very well for them. They tax each and every person dedicated to freedom in many different respects. Yes, financially with their abhorrent tax system that sends money to the cult to generate conflict, not peace. They generate these wars so that the useless eaters, that's what they call us, the useless eaters, that we're using resources that were really meant for them. And out of their benevolence, they're allowing us to walk around the planet until they deem it's time for us to go. Yeah. And if the past 3 years of what we've gone through doesn't convince you that that's what they're all about, wow. I think you need to go to a different channel. Bye. Just look at their latest goat rodeo in Ukraine. As I mentioned to you from the very beginning, that this is a globalist cult war between factions of the globalist cult. I truly believe Putin and Xi are members of the globalist syndicate. But they double-crossed other members of the globalist syndicate. See, the syndicate wants to introduce, the cult wants to introduce their great reset, where they get everything and you get, and I get nothing. But the plan was for the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund, the Bank of International Settlements, the World Bank, the the central banks of the world, overseen by the banking families, and let's name them because they get so mad when I do this. The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, Lazards, the Pinkuses, the Warburgs, the Seifs, the Loebs, and the top of the pyramid, the Pessoa family. See, so they would run the reset. And what happens when the dollar gets shoved to the side and their new reserve currency of the world, that being their special drawing rights, that is nothing more than a basket of currencies that are fabricated by the globalist cult. And they thought they could do this by sparking maybe even a nuclear event in Ukraine with their puppets Putin and Xi. But Putin and Xi cut a side deal and said, why should we take all the heat for this? If we're going to do this, let's get a big cut of the action. In fact, let's run the show. Yeah, let's run the show. And you know what? That's what they did. So what's happening in Ukraine, as I mentioned to you, since before February 24th, 2022, it's a war amongst the globalists. And the goal is who's going to be the reserve currency of the world? Is it going to be the ruble and the yuan, backed by physical commodities such as gold, silver, oil, natural gas? Or is it going to be the fake paper mache fiat currencies that's not backed by anything but overseen by the Soroses and the Schwabs and the banking families? Putin recently made a speech. Here's what he said. The neoliberal model of the United States, that'd be the globalist cult model, is experiencing crisis. No one can dictate to our people how we should build our society. Putin went on, traditional values should be respected. Ooh, he's off the rails from the global. This is why you see globalist cult members going after Putin and Xi, because they realize they cut a side deal and by speaking some individual rights speech talks, little talking points, that maybe they can get millions, if not billions of people to go along with them and then cut the syndicate out. Traditional values should be respected. The West is losing the upper hand and is quickly becoming the minority. Western elites have no right to enforce others to follow their path. So to that, what was the response of the globalist cult? Well, in studying, this is from Sirhaj, in stunning strategy reversal, the Pentagon will no longer rule out use of nuclear weapons against a non-nuclear threat. Moments ago, as part of his closely watched speech, Vladimir Putin appeared to talk down the likelihood of a nuclear attack in Ukraine. Putin stated there was no political, military reason in a nuke strike in Ukraine. However, the Pentagon stepped up. The Pentagon's new national defense strategy rejects limits on using nuclear weapons, long championed by arms control advocates, citing burgeoning threats from Russia and China. Oh yeah, about who's going to be the reserve currency, not the dollar. In response, the U.S. will maintain a very high bar for nuclear employment without ruling out using the weapons in retaliation to a non-nuclear strategic threat to the homeland, U.S. forces abroad or allies. By the way, we came to find out that we have the 101st Airborne in Romania, and we also have come to find out that we have boots on the ground in Ukraine. Yeah. We have Zelensky saying he won't sign any peace agreements or even look at them. He's a puppet of the World Economic Forum, put there to help usher in their reset that Putin and Xi got a hold of. And we have this globalist cult war. And there are a tremendous number of casualties in this. one of which is the entire European populace. What recently happened? That Nord Stream 1 and 2, that gas pipeline from Russia into Europe, got blown up. Kim.com, IT guru extraordinaire out of New Zealand. How did the Russians know that the UK blew up the Nord Stream pipelines in partnership with the United States? Because Liz Truss, you know, who was like prime minister for less than a head of lettuce could last, to usher in their new puppet from the World Economic Forum, this guy Rishi Sunak, would-be British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak family runs a Chinese-linked World Economic Forum partner company pushing digital IDs and social credit scores. Yeah, they had to get somebody a little bit more palatable, right, to push the globalist agenda, because that war in Ukraine wasn't working out so well that Putin and Xi hijacked. But then Kim.com put this out. Liz Truss used her iPhone to send a message to the Secretary of State in the United States, Blinken, saying, quote, "It's done," end quote, a minute after the pipeline blew and before anyone else knew. How did Kim.com say you got this information? iCloud admin access rocks. Yeah, it's about that admin access, whether it's about elections or getting this information. Conflict. Blowing up the pipeline will put hundreds of millions of people in harm's way. But it was war against Putin, right? By the cult. Because he crossed them. And that was a huge revenue stream for Putin, and it was a huge leverage stream that he could implement on the syndicates, so they decided to take it out. These are the same cult members that are telling you they're all about the green agenda. Really? Tell me about blowing those pipelines up and what that did to the environment. Yeah. But the last thing they want is negotiations or peace. Because if there's peace in the Russia-Ukraine issues, then, well, it's hard to implement their reset, whether it's run by the globalist cult or whether it's run by Putin and Xi, right? House Dems walk back letter to Biden urging Ukraine negotiations after the White House reacted to it. Remember? A group of people who saw their elections getting in a little trouble sent a letter to Biden. Said, hey, I think you should talk about some negotiations here. This is something we were talking about well before February 24th and 2022 election. Invasion of Ukraine. Of which we were demonized for pushing for negotiations. They said, hey, you better negotiate. Well, the White House came back and said, stop it. To the point where less than 24 hours after they issued this letter about how the Biden administration, rather than sending billions of dollars of armaments to Ukraine, causing more death and destruction of Ukraine and its citizens, why don't you just sit down and talk? This hasn't occurred. Meanwhile, Zelensky's signing documents that he won't negotiate, right? And Klaus Schwab told him, Soros, no, this has to go. You want to remain a billionaire, Zelensky? Progressive Democrats formally retract call for diplomacy as Ukraine war hawks steamrolled dissent. Of course. Glenn Greenwald, the investigative journalist, wrote, they couldn't even hold out for 24 hours. What a complete humiliation. I wouldn't be that surprised if, before the end of the day, Representative Jayapal announces that she and the rest of the House progressives are getting tattoos of Vladimir Zelensky and the Raytheon logo on their bodies to repent for their momentary lapse of loyalty. The humiliation of Representative Jayapal and the House Progressive Caucus just got worse even when it appeared it couldn't. Her degrading reversal of their Ukraine letter after one day wasn't enough. Now they're formally retracting it and blaming their staff really put that out, not them. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they got called on the carpet by the syndicate. But they're all a bunch of warmongers, right? Pentagon confirms U.S. boots are on the ground in Ukraine. Finland says Ukraine's arms going to Ukraine, are ending up in the hands of criminal gangs. Remember, a number of people, including Rand Paul in the Senate, asked for accounting of the $80 billion add it all up. And now there's another $50 billion sitting on the table that they're talking about releasing before the new Congress gets installed, right? You can't. Oh, hey, Ukraine is a cesspool for human trafficking, money laundering, weapons laundering, drug laundering. Finland says Ukraine army arms end up in hands of criminal gangs. Yeah, of course. Meanwhile, Russia says a major dam in Crimea is hit by U.S.-supplied rockets. This will disrupt the drinking water and the supply of drinking water for people in Crimea. Welcome to the victim list. And then, when all else fails, we got to open up another front of war. Heads up for an attack on Saudi Arabia just in time. They're saying that Iran is going to hit Saudi Arabia. Now, wait, let's look at this. Saudi Arabia has been negotiating with China and Russia to become part of the BRICS movement and to adapt the ruble and the yuan as payment for oil rather than the dollar and the petrodollar, to move that out. So Saudi Arabia is talking to Russia and China. Iran is an ally, a puppet, if you will, of Russia and China. Why would Iran attack Saudi Arabia? You don't think Putin and Xi are saying, you're not going to do that. Stop it. No. So Saudi Arabia and the U.S. are putting this out. Oh, we think Saudi Arabia is about to get attacked. Well, could it be that it's kind of like a false flag operation? Not kind of. It is a false flag operation that something is going to attack Saudi Arabia. They're going to blame it on Iran. Not to Iran, bad dudes. I get it. But when all else fails, open up another front of a war. Huh? Divert the attention of what's happening in Ukraine, because that's not going the way it's supposed to go. Yeah. The globalist cult loves conflict, loves war, because they play both sides of the equation and they get more power, more control, and more wealth. And in the process, useless eaters like us get drafted, go to war, and die. That's their playbook. In a nutshell. And remember, is every D a globalist? Yeah, I believe so. Is every R? Vast majority. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You need to call them out. Mm-hmm. And tell them you're wise to their game. And if they keep worshiping at the altar of the globalist cult, you right now, even though election just occurred, you and your family and your friends and your neighbors are going to find someone to run against them and get them out of office. They hate that. They hate accountability. They hate transparency. And they hate you knowing the truth and the facts and what's really going on. So, it's up to you. If this continues at this point, it's on all of us for sitting on the couch and not holding these globalist cult scum accountable. I thank you for joining me today. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Available 24/7 at davejanda.com. We hope you become part of our freedom family.